Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're taking a look at a case that, well, honestly, it's one of the most baffling and chilling mysteries from the early 80s. We're going to break down the timeline, the facts, and the hard evidence of a cold case that true crime researchers are still debating to this very day. Now, I want to keep things respectful here because we are talking about a very real, very devastating family tragedy. But by digging into the source material, we can really get a clear picture of exactly what went down, what went wrong, and why this thing is still unsolved over 40 years later.
Okay, let's dive right into this. There's a phrase often used when talking about this case. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend in the quiet mountain community. And that really just hits the nail on the head. You picture this tranquil escape to the Northern California woods, right? A family just trying to get away. And then, boom, it's completely shattered by an act of just absolute, inexplicable violence. What happened next turned this quiet town completely upside down and sparked a mystery that has endured for decades.
Chapter 1. Cabin 28, a peaceful mountain getaway.
Now, what's absolutely crucial to understand right off the bat is who was actually in the cabin that night in April 1981. It wasn't some remote, isolated shack. It was nestled right there in the Keddie Resort community. So, picture this. Inside Cabin 28, you've got 7 people. Sue Sharp, the mom, her oldest son John, and his friend Dana Wingate, who is crashing for the night. Then you have 12-year-old Tina Sharp and 3 younger siblings. That is 7 people packed into this little space. By all accounts from the source material, it was just a totally normal evening. They were settling in, completely oblivious to the nightmare that was about to unfold.
Moving on to Chapter 2, a horrifying discovery the morning after.
So fast forward just a few hours. The sun comes up, and one of the younger kids wakes up and walks into the living room. What they found, it's literally the stuff of nightmares. That ordinary evening had violently turned into an unimaginable discovery. Sue, John, and Dana had been brutally murdered. And the scene wasn't just violent. Investigators noted that it showed signs of a massive, desperate struggle. The sheer brutality of an attack like that, in such a tiny, confined space, it immediately threw early responders for a loop. But then, authorities notice a detail that defies all logic. 3. While this incredibly violent and no doubt deafening struggle was tearing apart the living room, exactly 3 younger children slept through the whole thing in a bedroom just a few feet away. When police arrived, those 3 kids were sitting there completely physically unharmed. It's a bizarre anomaly, right? How on earth does a bloodbath happen in the main room of a tiny cabin while 3 kids sleep soundly through the night?
And as if the scene wasn't baffling enough, the cops quickly realized the head count was off. 3 people deceased, 3 younger kids unharmed, that's 6, but there were 7 people the night before. 1 person was completely unaccounted for. 12-year-old Tina Sharp had just vanished. Poof, without a trace. She wasn't in the living room, she wasn't in the back bedroom, and this was a massive red flag for investigators because it completely broke the pattern of the crime scene. The younger kids had been ignored, but Tina was deliberately taken.
This urgent disappearance brings us to Chapter 3, The Search, Looking for Tina.
Now, as investigators are processing this gruesome scene, they're simultaneously launching a massive manhunt through the dense surrounding forests. And a huge question is hanging over everyone's head. Why had Tina been taken? If the attackers just wanted to commit a massacre, why pull one specific 12-year-old girl out of the cabin entirely? Was she the actual target all along? Or was she just snatched as an afterthought, maybe because she saw something she shouldn't have?
Which leads us to the biggest, most glaring mystery of the whole case. Who committed such a brutal crime? Think about it. Overpowering 3 people, including 2 teenage boys inside a cramped cabin? That takes an insane amount of physical force, pure rage, or, let's be real, likely multiple perpetrators working together. Figuring out the who instantly became the absolute driving force of the police operation.
And we keep circling back to that wild anomaly. How did the younger children remain untouched? Did the killers somehow not realize there were kids sleeping in the next room? Did they know and just consciously decide to spare them? Or did the weird layout of the cabin somehow muffled the absolute chaos happening just feet away? These 3 questions basically formed a brick wall that detectives were desperately trying to smash through.
Let's look at the timeline and see how this all builds up. From that horrible morning in April 1981, we have to make an agonizing jump forward. Months go by. Then, a grim discovery. Tina's remains were finally found in a super remote area. And get this, it was hundreds of miles away from the Keddie Resort. So, unfortunately, finding her didn't bring closure. If anything, it blew the mystery wide open.
The fact that her captors traveled that immense distance with her added a whole new, deeply complex layer to an already baffling investigation.
Which perfectly leads into Chapter 4, A Flawed Investigation, Decades of Dead Ends.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why the case just stalled. As the years dragged into decades, this super frustrating dynamic popped up. On one hand, you have serious investigative efforts. We're talking tons of witness interviews, re-examining old suspects, and eventually bringing in much newer forensic tech. But all of that is constantly slamming into some major investigative hurdles. The source material points out that the original 1981 investigation was notoriously flawed. There were documented mistakes, major evidence collection issues, and some incredibly critical leads that just got totally ignored early on. So essentially, you've got modern science trying to fight the ghosts of sloppy police work from decades ago.
So, the harsh reality of it all is this. Despite those renewed efforts, despite the fancy new forensics and the second guessing, no one has ever been convicted. It's been more than 40 years since that violent April night, and the victims of Cabin 28, they've never seen complete justice. The system, totally bogged down by those early missteps, just hasn't been able to definitively close this incredibly dark chapter.
And that brings us to our Vial section, Chapter 5, An Unsolved Mystery. The Legacy of Cabin 28.
Because look, a case with this many weird anomalies, unharmed sleeping kids, a kidnapped girl found hundreds of miles away, completely botched early police work, it doesn't just fade away, right? It leaves a massive, heavy legacy. For years, Cabin 28 itself just sat there abandoned, kind of this haunting, physical reminder of the tragedy right in the middle of the community, until it was eventually demolished. But here's the thing, knocking down the building did absolutely nothing to erase the mystery. The physical walls are gone, but the perplexing facts we just mapped out, they're as solid as they ever were.
So I want to leave you with the one question that still echoes through the empty lot where Cabin 28 used to sit. Who was responsible? It's a stark reminder that some mysteries just stubbornly refuse to die out with time. Maybe someday, a tiny piece of overlooked evidence or some crazy new forensic breakthrough will finally crack this case wide open. But until then, the Keddie Cabin 28 massacre remains one of America's most haunting, unsolved crimes. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing the facts, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next one.